Hello everyone, welcome to the next video on We Are the Music Makers by Arthur O'Shaughnessy. This poem interestingly is made up of 9 stanzas, but according to Palgrave's collection it has been abridged into 3 stanzas. And today here in this video I am going to talk about these 3 stanzas explained in great detail so that you do not face any difficulty in understanding this poem. So, what are we waiting for? Let's start at the outset. This poem is written in praise of all artists. The poet accentuates their role in the world through this poem, highlighting the greatness and the transformative power of art and artists in all forms. It is very popular on account of its theme of the permanence of creativity in art and music. Appreciation of art, isolation, and beauty are some of the major themes that the poet discusses. The poem discusses also two things: the importance of art and the role that artists play in this world to bring change. Their timeless and immortal works not only give positive vibes in the society but also help people come out of their unimaginative, dull, and monotonous existence. In other words, we can tell that artists give us or create in our minds or bring to our minds sense of colors, different shades or hues of colors. These artists are way beyond human understanding. That is why the poet puts these artists on highest pedestal, calling them immortal beings, and their work as a result is immortal. Now I am going to talk about the literary devices that the poet makes use of in this poem. First is assonance. Assonance is the repetition of the vowel sounds in the same line, such as the sound of E in the line, please follow the text as I tell, and we are the dreamers of dreams, and the sound of I in built Nineveh with our sign. You will see this in the third stanza. Next is alliteration. Alliteration is the repetition of consonant sounds in the same line in quick succession, such as the sound of W in the line, to the old of the new world's worth, and the sound of C shall go forth and conquer a crown. So the repetition of these sounds or the recurrence of these sounds occur quite close to each other, and hence we can safely conclude that this is another instance of your alliteration. We must not forget to talk about imagery, symbolism, enjambment, that and metaphor allusion also that the poet has made use here. Imagery is used to make the readers perceive the things involving their senses. For example, if you see the line, "Wandering by lone sea breakers, we fashion an empire's glory and shall go forth and conquer a crown." These 3 lines clearly hint at the use of Arthur O'Shaughnessy's imagery. Next comes symbolism. Symbolism is the use of symbols to signify ideas, qualities by giving them symbolic meanings. Like if you follow the phrase deathless ditties, it is the symbol of timeless stories. Enjambment is also used here. It is, if you see the line, "Yet we are the movers and shakers of the world forever, it seems." So the idea continues from the first line and moves on into the next. And there where the sentence or the phrase or the line makes a complete sense. Metaphor. This is another figure of speech, and throughout this poem there is the use of this extended metaphor of music, which compares different objects with adventure and pain. And finally comes allusion. Allusion is a belief or an indirect reference, you can tell, to person or of a person, place, thing, idea. It can be anything. Idea can be of many types, means when you are alluding, it can be a historical idea, cultural, political, idea or any idea of literary significance. One example would be, if you see the lines that would be coming later towards the third stanza, some words taken from the Bible. They are biblical, having Christian and Judeo-Christian meanings, you can tell, like Nineveh and Babel. So when we come to or read the later or the latter part, you will see them very clearly. Now, I would like to talk about the tone of the poem. How has this poem been written? In what tone? It is predominantly, means primarily, it is a celebration or appreciation. Here the poet celebrates and also involves us, the readers, to celebrate the imaginative power of the artists, by using which they are able to bring changes in the society. It can be any form of art, be it a song, a poem, or a painting. It is capable of arousing people's emotions, awaken their imaginative abilities, inspire them to rebel against a dull world, which is repetitively used in the first stanza, and he hints, if not only in the first stanza, he hints in the latter stanzas also. Art is not only capable of raising new empires through fantasies, but is also competent in destruction. In other words, you can tell that artists produce works that are beneficial for uplifting the society. So, this poem is full of positivity. It is not only that artists suffer, it is their suffering through which, their sacrifice through which, we gain positivity, we gain knowledge. So on a holistic level, you can tell that this poem is full of positivity. So that's it about the discussion regarding the background and the context of the poem, which you will obviously include in your answers as and when it is necessary. But without wasting much time, let's start at the outset with the poem. We will read the entire poem once. Once we finish the 3 stanzas, I have written it for you, the entire 9 stanzas, so that you are interested in knowing the latter part also, because it is important that at least you know when you are including it in your answers or when you are reading the entire poem. Okay. So this poem, We Are the Music Makers, first appeared in the collection called Music and Moonlight in 1874. It is known as the Ode and popularly known by the first line of the poem, We Are the Music Makers. And it is this poem is known for the origin of the phrase movers and shakers, which you will find in the first stanza itself. We are the music makers, and we are the dreamers of dreams, wandering by lone sea breakers and sitting by desolate streams, world losers and world forsakers, on whom the pale moon gleams. Yet we are the movers and shakers of the world forever, it seems. So we here, there is no reference to any particular art or artist. That is why it gains such widespread appeal. This is an appeal to the artists belonging to all and different realms. And in the second line, the we, there is an assertion of their role, the role of the artists, which is put forward in a bold manner. Now, in the next line, the third line and the fourth line, there is mention of 2 words, lone and desolate. These 2 words are reflective of the solitude that artists require, denouncing the existing status quo. Status quo means the existing order that is there, present, prevalent in the world. So in these 2 lines, despite being perceived as an oddity, as something out of the box, something that does not fit into the pattern or the norm, who haunts or visits these places where these people, means the artists, they haunt or visit the places where no one turns up, and they are the real movers and shakers, the real ones who are the rebels of the world. So the sea breakers are kind of, you can tell, the places where is quite desolate, where no one visits quite often. Desolate streams, again, lonely places where it is not visited quite often. And the phrase world losers and world forsakers implies not only the difficulty of sustaining art, but also addresses an issue that is striking with many contemporary artists. So this is very important. It suggests that they are removed from the world. They are something, they are a realm beyond. on whom the pale moon gleams. Pale here, pale moon signifies the little or the meager sustenance they gained through their art. Yet we are the movers and shakers of the world forever, it seems. In the final two lines, movers and shakers signify the rebellion outside the norm, and they refer to the people who bring some sort of dynamicity to a static world. You will note that there is an interesting use of the phrase pale moon. Now it is important that it is important that you note that it is a reference to the idea of the moon having an effect on the mental state of the people. Lunacy, often used to describe madness, is derived from the Latin word called luna, which stands for the moon. So this in turn becomes a reason that artists were viewed as madmen by the rest of the world. So the whole world used to treat them on derogatory terms. They used to degrade them. Their qualities were not appreciated. But look at the sacrifice they are making to bring about dynamicity, to bring about color, to bring about positivity in this world. And the poet here is singing in praise of these artists in any form. With wonderful deathless ditties, we build up the world's great cities, and out of a fabulous story, we fashion an empire's glory. One with a dream at pleasure shall go forth and conquer a crown, and three with a song's measure. Now we will see the next part. Can trample a kingdom down. So this is the third stanza where we'll end, and we'll read the next of the poem after I explain this entire thing. So can trample an entire kingdom down. So this is very important. Now what is Arthur O'Shaughnessy telling here? With the wonderful deathless ditties. Here deathless ditties means the timeless songs. The creation is not restricted to simply the cities but to new settlements, as we see here in the second line itself. We build by the world's greatest cities. Means he is at once. The moment he is telling we, he is at once with the different artists of the world. The effects of the artistry on the world here is highlighted. The immortal songs created by the artist's souls can build the world's greatest cities. The timelessness of art and music is, you have to keep this in mind, that it is not limited to the present or the contemporary period. It goes beyond the age they are created in. If we look at the greatest epics like the Mahabharata, the Iliad, I am sure you must have heard of them. Like the Mahabharata, the Iliad, you can also take another, maybe you may not have heard of this, it's not quite popular, the Epic of Gilgamesh. Okay, so these works, we understand they exist. How do we know about them if the authors or the poets had not written about them, isn't it? So we understand the intangibility and the timelessness of these creations. The places, civilization mentioned here, the people mentioned here, they have been destroyed, they have died, they are no more there, they do not exist anymore. But their presence, we feel their presence still till now. Why? Because it is the work of the artist. It is due to the work of the artist that we still remember them. What is important in the second stanza is how the poet deals with the subversive nature of art. It states that a man may conquer through his ambition, and all it takes is a musical bar to bring down kingdoms or civilizations, as you will see here by the song's measure. Song's measure refers to the musical bar. So that is what it takes for a man to bring down great kingdoms and civilization, to trample them. So, and out of a fashion of a fabulous story. So the fantasy that comes to an artist's mind can shape up things that he constructs, or that he wishes to construct. We fashion an empire's glory. So the glory of a civilization, the artistic height of an empire is gauged, is measured from the work of the artist. One man with a dream at pleasure So pleasure here means adequate opportunity. So the moment an artist gets an adequate opportunity, he can achieve great heights. Shall go forth and conquer a crown. This is the level of his achievements. Conquer a crown, a concrete structure, some extraordinary achievement that he can make. Concrete means something solid, constructing something solid, and some extraordinary achievement that he is going to make. And 3 with a new songs measure. So 3 here means the involvement of more people, and songs measure, as I already told you that it is about the musical bar. So the involvement of more people means that the involvement of more people means that the poet is trying to tell us that more people means achievement of new novel ideas that can trample an empire down. Means your power increases, the capability, the capacity to achieve new heights increases, and here the potential of the artistry cannot be denied. Now we are moving on to the 3rd stanza. We in the ages lying in the buried past of the earth, built in Nineveh with our sighing, and Babel itself in our mirth, and overthrew them by prophesying to the old of the new world's order, new world's birth. For each age is a dream that is dying, or one that is coming to birth. So we in the ages lying, that is the artists, we the artists, creators, in the ages lying, in the presence of the artists, suggests the presence of the artists in all ages. In the buried past of the earth, in the past that has already buried, that is already underneath the earth, built Nineveh with our sign. So here hints at the torture. In Nineveh, I will explain it just now. It hints at the torture. Sign, why? Because it hints at the torture those enslaved people of Nineveh received. And also I will talk about Babel here. So Nineveh was an ancient city in Assyria which Jonah the prophet didn't wish to go to and prophesy about its imminent destruction. Babel, on the other hand, was a city whose people were determined to build a tower to reach God, which was eventually destroyed by God because God in turn made the builders speak in different languages, leading to massive miscommunication. So ultimately it resulted in the chaos. So we know that though these cities, these places, Nineveh, Babel or Babylon, they are in ruins, they have outlived their historical counterparts due to the timelessness of art. And who has created this art? The poets, the artists. So Babylon was created with a mirth, but nevertheless, whether it is created out of sighing, which talks about enslavement, or whether it is created out of mirth, all exists in our mind. We are all aware of them. We, the readers, are aware of them. Why? Because of the artists. And overthrew them by prophesying. So the artists are capable of not only overthrowing the old world order, but also creating myths and religions which can radicalize our minds, which can create an impact on the minds of the readers in a way that blurs the lines between the poets and the prophets. It is not that only the prophets can look into or look ahead or look into the future or something along those lines. It is the poets also have this kind of capacity. The ones who are artists, they also possess this capacity to do so. For each age is a dream that is dying. So the present age which arises from the ashes of the dying past, or one that is coming to birth, the present which simultaneously gives birth to the future. So no matter what is it, whether it is the present age that is standing due to from the ashes of the past, or whether it is the present which will give birth to the future, we cannot deny the presence of the artists. We cannot deny the contribution of the artists in the world. So whether you call them lunatic, whether you call them whether you throw them out of the world order, their sacrifice is something that cannot be repaid. This poem is kind of a tribute, as Arthur O'Shaughnessy is doing. So just let's go through the rest of the part quickly so that you know what the rest of the poem is all about. A breath of our inspiration is the life of each generation, a wondrous thing of our dreaming, unearthly, impossible seeming. The soldier, the king, and the peasant are working together in one. till our dreams shall become their present, and their work in the world be done. They had no vision amazing of the goodly house they are raising. They had no divine foreshowing of the land to which they are going. But on one man's soul it hath broken, a light that doth not depart, and his look or a word he hath spoken, wrought flame in another man's heart. And therefore today is thrilling with the past day's late fulfilling, and the multitudes are enlisted in the faith that their fathers resisted, and scorning the dream of tomorrow are bringing to pass as they may in the world for its joy or its sorrow. And here towards the end we are moving. The dream that was scorned yesterday. But we, with our dreaming and singing, ceaseless and sorrowless we, the glory about us clinging of the glorious futures we see, our souls with high music ringing. O men, it must ever be that we dwell in our dreaming and singing a little apart from ye. For we are afar with the dawning and the suns that are not yet high, and out of the infinite morning intrepid you hear us cry. How spite of your human scorning, once more God's future draws nigh. And already goes forth the warning that ye of the past must die. Great hail, we cry to the comers from the dazzling unknown shore. Bring us hither your sun and your summers, and renew our world as of yore. You shall teach us your songs new numbers and things that we dreamed not before. Yea, in spite of a dreamer who slumbers and a singer who sings no more. So that is where and how the poem ends. But since you do not have this in your syllabus, the entire 9 stanzas, it is better you focus on the part that is there. So that is what brings us to the rest or draws us to the close of the poem. I hope you will not have much difficulty in reading this poem, because though at once you may hear that, okay, my God, 9 stanzas, how am I going to read it? But that is really very easy. It is you read it as a tribute, you read it as a poem where the poet talks about art for art's sake, that you should appreciate for the sake of the art, not going too much details into it, going into the morality of it. Okay, hope you will like this video. Comment in the comment section. Please like and share. Make sure that you have subscribed to this channel for any latest updates that you do not miss. And I hope to come back to you too for more updates and some more new videos. Till then, stay tuned. Happy learning.